Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. British and Irish Lions 27, Wallabies 19. What a game, actually. What a brilliant start to the Test series. It threatened at one stage to become one-sided. But this Wallabies team showed that there's fight there and that there is actually a team there. And it was everything we had hoped for with regards to the progression that they'd shown last year. And we'd really sat there hoping, can they make this a competitive series? Can they compete? And whilst they never really were going to look like they were going to win the game, that second half performance from Joe Schmidt's men will be a big warning to the Lions. That if they are not on top, if they are not at their best, they could potentially slip up and lose a game here. And that's a big, big victory from a moral point of view for the Wallabies. The morale that they'll take out of this whole game means that maybe next week we might see something special. And that's what I hope. You know, they can look at that 20-minute period where they completely dominated the game and they can maybe say to themselves, you know what, maybe they're not actually all that. Maybe we actually can have a go here. And that was always going to be the big problem for Joe Schmidt, building that belief and trying to convince a very young, very inexperienced Australian side that they can compete and take the game to, you know, the Lions. And credit to them, they did that. And to be fair, I mean, the Lions at stages looked really good. Ty Byrne, busy getting his man of the match performance. I mean, he was phenomenal. Just so relentless. I mean, he's one of those players who I just don't understand why he isn't always in the World Player of the Year sort of conversations, because he's just so consistent. But the Lions looked good at portions in the first half. At one stage, we were like, oh, hang on, are we going to see a complete runaway series? But weren't as good in the second half. And that might be a bit of a worry to Andy Farrell. So let's have a look at the game, shall we? And let's kind of sort of dive into it and kind of see what was what. So it all started, and you can't actually see much here. What's going on here? Let's just mute this. We'll sort that out. So it all started in the first minute, actually, when Finn Russell got a penalty early on. And again, Test match rugby, you take the points when they're on offer, and you don't stuff around. So he took the points, and that kind of got us going. Now, that would have been frustrating itself from an Australian point of view, because they would have wanted to have really started well and be able to get an early point to try and put the pressure back on the Lions. That didn't really happen, especially when Tupulato scored in the 8th minute. So Finn Russell, I mean, really good work there. Some nice build-up, some good pressure around the line, and then Finn Russell loved to pass out towards Tupulato, cut back through the defence, and he went over. So 10-0 after less than 10 minutes, and we went a bit worrying with regards to how dominant they looked at a stage. But something out of nothing, pinpoint from Jake Gordon, ball over the top, and Jorgensen went up, and as he went up to, basically had one hand on the ball. As he went down, then managed to rip the ball out of the hands of Hugo Keenan, turned around, nobody in front of him, off he went, and scored in the corner. 5-10, bit of a game on all of a sudden. And it remained at 5-10 for quite a while, actually. It was just before half-time when Tom Curry went over for the Lions' second try. Finn Russell adding the extras. And that would have been frustrated with it in the Wallabies, because at 10-5 at half-time, you're now thinking, well, we're in this game and we can compete. At 17-5, you're thinking, oh, shit, we're almost in the game, but now they've gotten a little bit away from us. But at 17-5, you score first, you're back in the game, and they didn't do that. And, you know, the Lions started the second half so well with that early try from Dan Sheehan. Just relentless pressure, really. And you know, Russell with another conversion. Look, the Lions did have a try chalked off. Hugh Jones, I think, fairly. But after that, literally, after that 42nd minute, it was basically one-way traffic, and it was not the way of the Lions. The Wallabies just pitched up. I'm not quite sure where they found that sort of gear, but they pitched up. And I think the big thing is they pitched up physically. They really suddenly started to embrace the physical battle. Before then, the Lions' defense was pretty relentless. They were tackling really well. They were winning the collisions. And then the Wallabies decided we can also play. I do think the bench made an impact. Tate McDermott, for example, was really good when he came on. Because in the first half, I would have said that I would have given pretty much every single Lions player a 7 out of 10 plus, with the exception maybe Hugo Keenan struggled a bit. But I would have given them a pretty good scores as a collective. In the second half, maybe not as good. And eventually found a try through Cardizano with Ben Johnson and the extras. And then Tate McDermott scored himself. So in the end, not the sort of thrashing and the runaway game we all sort of thought and expected we were going to see. And it's a 3-match series. A lot can happen. Now, the biggest problem again comes the depth. Australia, any injuries, for example, they can't really change much, whereas the British and Irish Lions have got a bank of world-class players ready to go. So, I mean, the Lions led for 81 minutes. They led for more than the game should actually go on for. And that shows you that they were never going to lose that game. That game was never in danger of slipping away. But Andy Farrell won't be happy with what he saw in the second half. Because if you play like that throughout the game, you could potentially lose that game. The percent of the game in the lead, 100% is mental. I don't think I've ever seen that. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, to be honest. And Australia, 7 entries to 8 entries, similar amount of points scored per entry. Ruck speed's very similar for the two teams. Attack profiles also quite similar. Defensively, again, this is where I talked about the physicality of the British and Irish Lions. Their dominant tackles were they just dominated the collisions. They were much, much better. I did felt that Australia were very, very good at the breakdown. 5 turnovers won, 4 tackle turnovers. They definitely targeted the breakdown, and they were pretty good there as well. Missing 31 tackles is not good enough when you've been asked to make fewer than the British and Irish Lions have. And I think that will be a big concern for Joe Schmidt, that especially in that first half, they missed too many tackles, and the kind of game got away with them before they really had much of a chance of giving it a real go. So it's 2 penalties, 3 tries to 3 tries and no penalties. No drop goals or anything. Carries, 136 from the Wallabies. Line breaks pretty similar, but again, turnovers lost, the breakdown. And I'll be interested to see what happens next week. I think I might see a Jack Morgan in. And I think what Australia did quite well is they had quite a mobile pack where they can move the ball around, but more to the point, they can get to breakdowns, and they could get breakdowns slightly quicker than the Lions. And I'll be interested to see if Andy Farrell maybe takes heed of that and maybe looks at a couple of sort of quicker options in and around the park. Maybe a Ben Earl ahead of a Jack Coden, for example, someone who's a bit quicker. I personally think Jack Morgan should probably come in. And Tom Curry had a good game, but I think Jack Morgan will be a big advantage at the breakdown. If you look at territory, most of it being played in the Lions 22. I mean, how's that for a stat? Absolutely bizarre. And that was all from the second half. Possession as well. Lots of possession being had inside the Lions territory. Well, that sort of 10 meter and 22 for the Wallabies. But let's look at the set plays. And I think this is something that the Wallabies were really happy with. The scrum was very good. They won a scrum penalty, and their scrum win percent was 100% versus the Lions 83%. I mean, that would have been a huge plus for Joe Schmidt. Lineouts, both teams probably need to work on it a little bit. But restarts are good from Australia. As I said, they did the basics pretty well, which was good to see. If you look at the attack, pretty similar. Similar post-contact meters, more carries in general from the Wallabies. They passed a bit more as well. But again, breakdown. Penalties can see the Lions' discipline will need to get a lot better. I think the Lions are quite lucky that they got away without a card, to be honest. I think that Ben Curry tackle on Tom Liner could have been looked at. I think that Ben Ur was quite lucky not to get penalised for that. No one's tackle. They said there was arms. I'm a bit skeptical. And I think Ty Ferdinand was very lucky not to get yellow carded for his hit on I think it was Ned Ikatal as it was coming up. So, discipline needs to improve from a Lions point of view, because if you have a bad day and you don't discipline, then all of a sudden you allow a team like Wallabies in. So defensively, but this is what I was saying from the Lions point of view, defensively, they were so good. 187 tackles made, 90% tackle completion, and they dominated those collisions. There were passages of play where Australia were relentlessly going after them, but they're just lying in the sand. We're not moving. You're not going to touch us. They kicked a bit more, though, did the Lions, which is probably expected, to be fair. In terms of some big individual performances, Nick Frost, 13 carries. Fraser McGrath, 12 carries. Len Ikatau, 11 carries. Max Jorgensen with 2 line breaks, but Ty Byrne, 23 tackles completed. He was an absolute machine out there. Nicholas Tukuspinyi, he got 19 tackles. Amari Toju with 19 tackles. Ty Byrne also with 3 turnovers. I mean, what a player. Dominant tackles, Tom Curry with 2, Will Stewart with 1. I think looking at the sort of the teams, the players that impressed me, I thought that Jack Coden was pretty solid. Tupulotu and Hugh Jones were very busy in the first half, didn't get as much chance in the second half. Finn Russell looked very good. From a Australia point of view, Fraser McGrath had a pretty solid game, I thought. We've got to get the centres in the game. Leonard Cattell, Joseph Sa'ali'i, those are your 2 best players, as far as I'm concerned from an Australian point of view. When Rob Valentini comes back, then maybe him as well. But those are your stars. Get them involved. You've got to get them on the ball. When they were getting onto the ball, Lineker was making meters. Swahili almost scored a try. Get those two players involved. You start getting them more involved. If that pack can get a bit of front foot ball and you can get those two players involved, you can compete because they can compete with any centre pairing in the world. You know, and that's a big plus for the Wallabies. One of the few things that they can compete. They're solid at the scrum. Great. Big box ticked. Let your best players get the ball as much as possible. It's not particularly revolutionary thinking. You know, it's just you've got your two players, you've got your attacking threats, get them on the ball and, you know, just let them try and have a go. So, yeah, what did you think of the game? I mean, I think overall the Lions were pretty good for most of the game. And I think in the first half, couldn't really complain. That lull in the second half will be a slight concern. Andy Farrell, being the perfectionist he is, won't be happy with that. So Joe Schmidt will probably be the happier of the two coaches despite losing. But he knows that there's no room for error next week. They have to go pitch up next week and try and get a performance. If they can try and get a performance next week, that's their best chance for me of getting a win, to be honest. What do you think? Leave it down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. And we'll see you guys all next time.